welcome to this Astranti video where we'll go over the examiner's report for the May and August 2020 CIMA Management Case Study sitting. Now, you can find this report by following the link to the Astranti website that you can see at the top here, or you can go to the CIMA website more specifically, where you'll find the blueprint along with a correlation of all of the variants for that exam sitting. And what this report effectively is the examiner's feedback that they have for what students wrote during that exam, and it will include general tips, what students need to do more of, and what what students should expect to write for each task. We're going to focus specifically on the tips, so we can find that in this particular document on page 29. So let's take a look at what the examiner believes good answers should have. To start with, good answers should have relevance to the requirement. So what this means is that your answer has to answer the question that is being asked, and this may involve some of the reference material that you have been given. Now, mock questions will always come with some additional unseen information that you have to integrate into your answer if you want the best marks. Let's say you're asked to explain the financial implications of an acquisition and you've been given information that says that this is a foreign entity. Well, you'll be expected to apply your knowledge of group accounting and foreign subsidiaries and the effect this kind of acquisition will have on a company's stakeholders. So you'll need to know the financial implications, maybe some IFRS, some international financial reporting standards surrounding these areas and how they apply in this particular example. This doesn't mean talk about group accounting and the technicalities behind how you work out group accounting, how you consolidate accounts, but you may be required to apply maybe some regulatory knowledge you have instead. And so that leads us into the next area then. You need to know the necessary technical knowledge. So when we're talking about technical knowledge, we of course mean the information you learned for your F2, P2 and E2 exams. But as I said, you're not learning the mathematics, the technical stuff behind it that you need for those exams. No, we're more talking about the general application of that information. So in the management case study exam, going back to the other example, let's say the implications of financial regulation under IFRS on the preceding company as a result of a particular business adventure. Then you're going to need to understand and apply the relevant IFRSs. So IFRS regulations to do with group accounting, to do with foreign subsidiaries. You're not going to need to know how to consolidate accounts, but you need to know what kind of impact this will have on the company, what sorts of things the company might need to be aware of when it comes to actually implementing and complying with those particular standards. This will what you'll be assessed on rather than the more mathematical and technical sides of the content you learned at these levels. And this is why the third one is to apply knowledge to a specific real-world scenario. Regurgitating theory is not something you'll be asked to do in the real world. You'll not be asked to regurgitate the definition or provisions according to IFRS. Now, let's be real. However, you will be expected to explain, analyze, and evaluate the implications of decisions. And this is why you need to apply the information you have learned from your F2, P2, and E2 topics and learn to use that in the context of the preceding company in the industry and give it a bit of a real-world twist to it to make it relevant to the company. And then, of course, answers should obviously be well structured. Discussions within an answer should be separated using appropriate headings, much like you would find in a business report. And then lastly, you should make sure that your answers are justified wherever they are required. So some questions may require you to justify a particular response or give a recommendation. And in these circumstances, to attain the best marks, you must give a reasonable explanation for why you believe a certain decision should or should not be made. So this could be in the form of an acquisition again, or a project, or how to resolve a conflict in the business. There are a number of ways they can assess you here. So make sure you read the question carefully and be on the lookout for questions that ask you for a justification, as that will be necessary for the best marks. Now, these are the elements that the examiners believe good answers should have, but how do you actually go about achieving this? Well, the first one is to revise the materials thoroughly. You should make sure to read all 3 pillars of the CIMA syllabus, so F2, P2 and E2 in this case, and not skip any risky topics. Now you won't need to know the theory again, as we've said before, to quite the same extent as you would in the objective tests, say like calculating the earnings per share or the ratios themselves, but you will need to understand their significance, what they mean, and what impact these might have on shareholders or various stakeholders within the business, as that can help justify your answers in the actual case study. The second point is to make sure you read the pre-seen material carefully and think about it. This is because you need to apply a mixture of technical knowledge to real-world scenarios. You need to understand the pre-seen before the exam because you can't waste time reading through it either. You have a limited amount of time that should be spent really writing rather than reading. So analysing the pre-seen and the industry and committing the important information to memory will help give you more time to write comprehensive and well thought out answers. And then lastly, you should practice past case study exams. Now the reason examiners recommend you do this is because by comparing your answers to the ones that have been provided in past exams to see if your answer is fleshed out and meets the requirements of the task. They recommend you do this because while you can learn the pre-seen and the information within it, and of course the industry, you can put all that in your into memory, the skill of creating and justifying your answers requires practice to develop. Planning, breaking down questions, structuring answers, and time management are all important skills that you need to do this exam successfully, and you cannot learn that through revision alone. You need to actually do it, and the best way to do it is by practicing past case study papers. So that's before the exam, but what about actually during it? Well, planning your answer is a big one. You should be conscious of the time you have and spend the first few crucial minutes creating a logical plan and structure. The point of doing this is that you can get some key information down on paper that you can refer back to as you write, rather than needing to remember it. It can also prevent you from getting a bit of writer's block in the middle of the exam as well, because you know what topics you want to discuss already and what order you're going to write them in. It gives you that necessary structure right at the start and prevents you from waffling, from going off on tangents and getting information confused, and it just makes the overall answer that much stronger if you properly plan it first. And then the last point, which is of course very important, is to make sure to commit to an argument. Now this is an interesting one. Bear in mind that you are a professional in your field, both as a student and of course in your position role-playing as a financial manager. You will be expected to make decisions with confidence. So sitting on the fence, sitting in the middle of an argument and not taking one side or the other can make an argument feel vague and unhelpful. And that is not what the examiners want. So do not be afraid if your answers do not match the examiners. They are obligated to mark your answers on its own merits. Right, so that's the end of this little video on tips for future candidates from the examiner's report. I hope this video has been helpful, and I wish you all the best in the case study exam. If you've enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the case study, you can head on over to the Astranti website, where we have a full range of case study materials on offer, including a full breakdown of the pre-seen analysis that you just saw a sample of. And if you want to stay in contact with us, and we would very much like to hear your opinions, thoughts and feedback, you can subscribe to us and our various social media channels, which include Instagram, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.